Hey Frogheads and fragrance lovers, welcome back. It's Benjamin here at the Scentaur Fragrance Channel chatting about another beautiful fragrance, and today we have on our hands Dolce & Gabbana, the One Royal Nights. Now first off, this is a Middle Eastern exclusive, so it's a little bit hard to get your hands on. You probably have to blind buy this one online like I have. It came out and was released alongside Dolce & Gabbana, the One Mysterious Nights, which is more of a rose oud combo. Now this one's a little bit different. It's a bit hard to explain. Not everybody seems to understand this fragrance, and there's a couple reasons for that. So let's jump into that. Of course, throughout the video, I'll talk about the performance, the compliment factor, my final thoughts, and the price. So first off, with the smell, what's going on here? You would have probably expect with one called Royal Night, and it being a Middle Eastern exclusive with Arabic print on the top, right there in the middle, I guess I should say, and a beautiful bottle, that you would be expecting a oud fragrance or oud flanker, and that's not really what this fragrance is all about. This does have some of the beautiful tobacco amber kind of DNA of the original. It still lingers on just a little bit, but what this fragrance really develops into, and what this fragrance is so different about it, is that it has a lot more to me of this gray amber, or maybe even gray ambergris quality about it. And what I mean by that is that there's different types of amber. There's the resinous, warm type of, amber that everybody's familiar with, that everybody seems to like, is so warm and cozy. That was more in the original fragrance, the EDT and the EDP version. But this one, it feels a little bit more cooler, feels a little bit more reserved, almost feels a little bit myrrh-like, a little bit colder, a little bit more gray, not metallic, but feels a little bit more reserved. And I do like that this fragrance feels more gentlemanly. It's not as playful as the original. So that's, to me, kind of a positive, that this is more of a gentlemanly, perhaps refined version, maybe a little bit more of a mature version for some people. The thing is, once we get into the details of this fragrance, there's a bunch of weaknesses, and there's glaring weaknesses with this fragrance. We'll talk about the longevity here in a second. There's something to be said there. But, this fragrance is not as rich. It's not as deep as the original. And people, when they get into this DNA, they're expecting for that amber, that beautiful tobacco, and that beautiful combination to really work with this Dolce & Gabbana, the One DNA. They really sacrifice that here. This fragrance feels lighter. Again, I never want to accuse a fragrance of smelling synthetic. Most fragrances, even if they might smell of lesser quality, most of the time, if a fragrance smells synthetic, it's because of the blending. And at a couple points, I am able to notice the aroma chemicals, and some people might say that there's slight, synthetic qualities about this fragrance. Again, most fragrances, especially designer fragrances, are synthetic anyways. It's how it's blended, and it's how it's treated. And this fragrance here maybe wasn't the most well blended, and maybe maybe they didn't make the best decisions creating this fragrance. So again, it feels lighter. It doesn't have as much of the richness. It's definitely not near as sweet as the original. But again, some gentlemen might like that this fragrance is not near sweet or playful. But this fragrance again feels a little bit more like a gray amber fragrance. It doesn't feel terribly exotic to me. There's some leathery components. It has a unique smoothness about it. I actually have some sprayed on my hand here. But the fragrance really it's not really that likable. And again, that almost synthetic quality to my nose coming through really does die down after the first couple minutes or so. Eventually it becomes more musky, and honestly, this fragrance feels like a gray amber and ambergris type of fragrance to my nose. That's mostly what I get. And it has a little bit of a hint in the ghost of its former self with the amber and the tobacco, but it's very much in the background. And if you put them side by side, I honestly don't know if people would recognize that this is the same fragrance. Honestly, it's quite different from the original, and I think that they departed too much from the original DNA, and I think that they didn't blend it perfectly, and I think that they should have put a little bit more sweetness in it, even if they were trying to make more of a mature fragrance. There needs to be a little bit more sweetness or a little bit more depth. I like fragrances that are deep and have weight to them, and this fragrance is definitely not giving me that. And that's what I wanted. I wanted a royal night fragrance. I wanted a nighttime, a darker fragrance. I wanted a sultry fragrance, maybe a seductive date night kind of alternative, instead of the rosy, mysterious nights again. Maybe this one could be a little bit even more, maybe it has a satiny feel to it, maybe a really interesting, luxurious feel about it. And again, this fragrance really doesn't, it really doesn't do much for me. I've seen lukewarm reviews from other fragrance reviewers and other people, and this one probably is going to get really mixed results. Some people are going to like it for what we're going to talk about here in a second, but a lot of people are probably not going to like it because it's not as sweet, it's not as playful, it's not, I don't think it's near as charming as in the original or even the EDP. So I think the beauty and I think the DNA has truly been compromised here. Getting to what people are probably going to like about this fragrance, and probably is the biggest positive, is that they've improved the longevity. Again, the EDT of Dolce & Gabbana, the one, gives me about 4 hours performance. It's not a bad performing fragrance. I mean, that's fine. If you want an inoffensive, intrusive fragrance that you can reapply throughout the day, maybe you're going out on a date, maybe you're just going to a party or just a little short event, 4 hours can get you by. Do most of us want 6 hours plus at least? Some people want even 8 hours plus, yes. So that one doesn't last long enough. The EDP for most people gives them still around 6 hours. Maybe some people can get 7 or so. But the EDP for some people, it still doesn't give them enough performance. This fragrance here will get you reliably 8, possibly even 9 hours performance out of it. But again, they sacrifice the quality and the blending to me to achieve a little bit better longevity. So they've sacrificed some of the richer, sweeter notes, some of the more things that perhaps smell more natural to the fragrance. I really don't know if this has less naturals in it than the original. I really don't know if this is more synthetic or not, but the blending certainly is not perfect here, and but the longevity is bigger. Now, you know, this is not a skin scent. It does have some projection, but it also doesn't project well. Is probably even, so, you know, some people want better projection out of the EDT and the EDP. This one even projects a little bit less. There is some sillage to this fragrance, but again, I would say that both the projection and the sillage perhaps are average, maybe slightly below average. And it does project at first, but all fragrances do. If you give it some time, this fragrance does have a little bit of a scent trail, but overall performance is not what it should be, even though it can give you 8 or even upwards of 9 hours of longevity, which is probably the biggest positive to this fragrance, and probably why this fragrance has sacrificed so much of its quality. So getting into the compliment factor, you know, Dolce & Gabbana, the one, the EDT, is probably the biggest compliment getter of them all, even though the EDP has the better performance and maybe is a little bit easier for people to notice, and because it performs better. But if you just get people close to you, if you're on a date night, if you're, you know, were to ask people on a tester strip, I think the EDT is the biggest compliment getter and probably the most appealing out of all of the, you know, the original is probably the best out of all of them. And this one really doesn't compete, in my humble opinion and in my experience, to those. This fragrance, even though it's not super exotic, it does smell a little bit exotic to people who don't understand fragrances. It does have a little bit of a Middle Eastern vibe, but to me, it's not exotic enough to be special. It does have a little bit of a maturity to it. So gentlemen liked it. It is a little bit more office appropriate. It is appropriate for everyday wear. You can wear this fragrance. To me, it's a little bit more versatile, that you can wear anywhere, anytime, very comfortably. Again, the EDT and the EDP version perhaps feel a little bit more colder weather fragrances. Of course, they're versatile enough to wear in any situation, especially in indoors, in air-conditioned environments. You can easily get away with it, but this one here is probably even a little bit more wearable. So for some people, that might be another positive. But again, it's not a compliment getter. It really isn't. It does smell a little bit luxurious. It's going to smell better to people in the air than it smells to you. If you smell it on your hand really close, it's going to smell synthetic. But to other people in the air, it does smell better. But again, it kind of has this leathery, amber, kind of like a dull, matured kind of quality about it. I think to a lot of people, it's really going to smell that way. So my final thoughts are, the prices are creeping down on these. That's one reason I went for this fragrance. You can pick a bottle up for about $50, $60 now, which is a great value compared to what this used to be. Again, this was an exclusive, a higher end fragrance that was kind of hard to get. Retail prices were upwards of $100 to $120 on these. So if you are interested in this, it's probably the best time to go for it now. But honestly, I think it's a big miss. I think this fragrance should have been richer and sweeter. I think that they should have snuck in a little bit of oud and something exotic into the original DNA. And they've really sacrificed the depth. They've really sacrificed what made this fragrance beautiful. and I would not recommend this fragrance. I personally wouldn't. I've heard mixed reviews. Some people might like it. Not trying to beat up on the fragrance. I actually wanted this fragrance for a very long time. I think it looks beautiful, but it's not what I wanted. And I don't think you'll like it either. So I'll see you next time, everybody. Please like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share the video, and tell a friend. I'll see you next time, everybody. Have a beautiful day. Sorry about this one. Not every fragrance is perfect. Bye.